What's going on, guys? I'm here for the second part of my breakdown. Apologize for it being so late. Obviously, I was trying to get it out as quick as possible without many games going by. I was trying to get it, obviously, with 0 games going by. That didn't go as planned. But with that being said, I'm here to break down the NFC West and the NFC North. Try to make this one a little bit quicker than the last one just because it was so long. And with that being said, I'm going to jump into it really quickly with the NFC West. I'm going to start with Seattle, who I think will win that division. I got them going 14-2 as a ceiling, and as a floor, 12-4. They're a very good team. And for me, as talented as that team is, I think it begins and ends with Russell Wilson. That being said, I mean, there was a lot of talk prior to the season about him having never received any MVP votes, which is mind-boggling, honestly, for as good a player as he is. Um, with that being said, I think he's going to play with a chip on his shoulder. I mean, obviously, if you watched our last episode, you know Devin has him for his MVP, and I was almost inclined to choose him as well. With that talented offense, obviously Metcalf, Carson, Tyler Lockett and company. I think this team is going to do some pretty big things. I mean, even on the defensive side of the ball, they're pretty talented with, Bobby Wagner, Quentin Dunbar, KJ Wright. Obviously, the addition of Jamal Adams didn't hurt as well. I mean, he's a guy that can literally play anywhere in coverage and in run defense. So, obviously, it's not as talented as those Legion of Boom days, but they have a very talented defense. They might struggle a little bit, maybe pressuring some quarterbacks, especially with the loss of Bruce Irvin. But still, they're capable of putting up points with the best of them. And they're capable of making big-time plays on defense to stop, other big-time players from scoring, especially now, like I said, with the secondary adding Jamal Adams. So I'm expecting some pretty big things from Seattle. That's why I got them a ceiling of 14-2. I think they're very capable of that. And with that being said, I'll move on to Los Angeles Rams, who I gave a ceiling of 12-4 and a floor of 10-6. The Rams, I believe, are a very similar team to the Bears. Very talented on the defensive side of the ball. Aaron Donald, Jalen Ramsey. They got Fuller, etc. Except with those big names on offense, they're not as talented. I mean, they are as talented on offense as I think the Bears are, just without the big names. I mean, obviously, you have Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods, who have always been a reliable 1-2 punch at wide receiver, and Malcolm Brown, who's been fairly impressive at running back after 2 games. But like the Bears, the question is kind of with that quarterback play. How far is, Jared Goff going to be able to take them? Is he going to be able to take them over that hump? Is he going to be able to help them compete with the best of the teams, Obviously, after 2 games, he's thrown for 542 yards on 69% completion, but for only 3 touchdowns, He's not a touchdown throwing machine. Obviously, it was a lot easier for him when he had a running back in Todd Gurley, obviously, with Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods. With that offense being as good as it was, as stacked as it was a lot easier for him. But now, obviously, losing the pass catching back in Todd Gurley, the touchdown numbers might not be there, but obviously he's still throwing for a good amount of yards. He's completing his passes at a high percentage, but is he going to be able to take care of the ball, late in games? Is he going to be able to keep his team competing with other teams down the stretch in those playoff games? If they do make it there. But they're very capable of doing a lot of big things over there with that team, Like I said, we know who they have on defense. I said who they have on defense and offense. And then, obviously that coaching staff. With a guy like Sean McVay leading your team and that coaching staff he's put together, that great mind he has, I mean, the things they can do are really unlimited. So with that being said, the Rams could be very impressive. I'm going to cut it here, and I'll be back with the second half of my NFC. Back with the bottom half of my NFC West predictions. With that being said, I'm gonna jump into it pretty quickly. The Cardinals, I got the ceiling of 10-6, a floor of 7-9. Um, this this feels like a team I cannot trust. Obviously, we know that they're very talented on both sides of the ball, especially with the addition of, you know, um, DeAndre Hopkins and you know, they got a very talented Kyler Murray at the helm, who I believe is a future, league MVP. But with that being said, um, even with the impressive win in their first game over the 49ers, they were able to, do some special things at the end of the game, especially, Kyler Murray took advantage of his new toy, DeAndre Hopkins, to get that win. But that very questionable O line is going to be hard to trust, especially later on in the season with that very, very tough schedule and those very tough defenses. They got the Seahawks twice, the Dolphins, Bills, Pats, Rams twice. I mean, the list goes on. So it's going to be real tough for this team to, compete against those defenses with that very questionable O line. I mean, obviously, we saw them against the 49ers. 49ers defense, who was very good last year, but it's pretty banged up right now. So the real test is going to be, like I said, when they have to face the Seahawks, when they have to face, the Pats and the Rams. Um, is that O line going to be able to hold Kyler Murray, upright? Are they going to be able to hold him? And, obviously he's capable of extending plays probably just as much as any quarterback in this league. I mean, we know how quick he is on his feet. Um, but when you're constantly pressured, it's going to be tough to do those things, especially with such a long season, constantly being chased around. If that offensive line can hold things together, um, I think they can do some special things this season. 10-6 would be a pretty impressive season for this team, especially as young as they are. But with that being said, um, I don't really expect big things. I could be wrong, and I will eat my words if they, go out and do something crazy. Like I said, 2-0 right now, but it's going to be really tough to maintain that throughout the season if Kyler Murray is constantly, having to run away from pressure and that O line can't keep him upright. But if they don't do anything spectacular, um, this is still a team that's very, very bright future, especially like I said with Kyler Murray at the helm, who I think is a future league MVP, as I've mentioned. Even if their season doesn't go as well as they would like for it to, especially with the addition of DeAndre Hopkins. I know they were expecting some pretty big things. They should still be happy with, the fact that they do have a bright future. And with that being said, this team for me, is fighting for third with the Cardinals, maybe in fourth place. It's very dependent on what happens with their injury situation. With the 49ers, I got a ceiling of 11-5 and 8-8. I mean, their ceiling is so high, and you know their floor is so low because of those injuries. I mean, it's no secret how talented they are. They brought back basically the same exact team as last year that went to the Super Bowl. But thus far, they've been plagued with injuries. Last game, losing, Joey Bosa, Jimmy G, Raheem Mostert, and if we're being real, those are guys you just cannot replace. So obviously they went out there and they got their first win against the Jets. So now they're 1-1 after having played 2 games. But with injuries like that, if they can't get those players back soon enough, and actually I think it was reported that Joey Bosa is officially out for the season. But if they can't get Jimmy G and Raheem Mostert, with already the big loss of Joey Bosa on their defense, who's obviously their defensive anchor, defensive rookie of the year from last year. If they manage to drop a few games, especially with that tough schedule they got coming up, facing the Seahawks, Rams twice, Pats, Packers, Saints, Cowboys, in that tough division that they're in with the Cardinals, Rams, and Seahawks. If they're obviously, 1-1 is not a bad start, but if they manage to drop a few more games with the injuries, it's going to be really tough for them to kind of recover from that with this talented division, and everybody aside from them starting 2-0. So, if they're able to get those players back quick enough, they can turn things around for their season. Like I said, it's still early, so I'm not making it seem like it's over. They're 1-1, so to say they're turning around their season, it's not like, they're horrible right now. They're 0-2, but because they're not. But if they do manage to drop a few games, it's going to be tough to recover. If they can get those players back quick enough, they're more than talented enough to recover. But if they don't, their season can go down in dumps very quickly. So I expect them to slide anywhere from between third place and fourth place in that very talented division. With the injuries having plagued them, I'd like to see the 49ers do some big things. I think they're very capable, very talented, but it's going to be tough with those injuries. So with that being said, that concludes my NFC West. Like I said, that Seattle in first, Rams in second, Cardinals in third, and 49ers to follow. In my opinion, that those two teams will slide. And with that being said, I'm going to go on to my NFC North next after this. So I will be right here to start my NFC North predictions now. I'm going to jump right into it. I got Green Bay in first place with a ceiling of 12-4. Excuse me, and a floor of 10-6. Obviously, the key for this team has always been and will remain Aaron Rodgers, Aaron Jones, and Devontae Adams. Obviously, we know last year they struggled. They weren't really able to get anything going due to the health of Aaron Rodgers. Obviously, he didn't play a full season last year. He wasn't healthy. So obviously, after 2 games, seeing Aaron Rodgers, he's looking like his old MVP Rodgers self. So the Packers are in a good spot to do some big things. The only thing about the Packers is, they're very young defense, but they do have pretty good playmakers in some key spots to, kind of anchor down that young defense with Amos at safety and Christian Kirksey and Rashawn Gary at linebacker. So, they got some veterans to, help those, young guys come along and play better into their spots and, be leaders on the field. So it almost always seems like anything is possible when you have Aaron Rodgers leading that team, especially when he's in his, MVP form. And they're always capable of putting up points with the best of offenses because they do have the best of offenses. So if that team can stay healthy with Aaron Rodgers to lead it, I think they're capable of making a very deep playoff run and more than capable enough to, making it to the promised land. And the key is really that defense, that young defense. If they're able to, kind of make plays in those key games and make plays in those key times and let Aaron Rodgers do what he needs to do down the stretch in the season and late in games, I think they'll be fine, even with that very young defense, as I've mentioned. So with that being said, I'm going to move on to another team, the Chicago Bears. And the Bears are a very good team, in my opinion, across the board on their depth chart. We obviously know how talented they are on defense. So Khalil Mack, Roquan Smith, Danny Trevathan, Kyle Fuller, and company. And they're not bad on offense either with Tariq Cohen, David Montgomery, Jimmy Graham, Allen Robinson, the list goes on. But what really scares people about this team, or rather doesn't scare anybody about this team, is obviously their quarterback play with Mitchell Trubisky. And I compared him to Jared Goff earlier. The teams will go as far as these quarterbacks take them, really. Will these players be able to, take care of the ball late in games and big situations? We obviously know he's been under fire basically almost since he's become the starting quarterback of the Bears. And for good reason. He was taking over guys like Deshaun Watson and, Patrick Mahomes. So people are very critical of everything he does in this league. And like I said, for a very good reason. So I think this team will be fine on the defensive side of the ball. And like I said, with the talented offense they have, they should be fine too. This just that this team will go only as far as he will take them. And thus far, after 2 games, he has played well and probably some of the best football he has up to this point. Um, but really, it's more a question of will he be able to continue to play this well, and if so, for how long? And that's really going to be the question for the Bears this season. Um, that's the top half of my NFC North, and that actually went pretty quickly. So I think I'm going to try to knock out the bottom half as well. With that being said, I got the Minnesota Vikings with a ceiling of 9-7, 6-10 in third place. Coming into the season, this is a team that I kind of figured would do pretty well. Especially, we all know how good that defense is, and they only got better with the addition of Yannick Ngakoue. I'm trying not to let these 2 games affect my predictions too heavily, considering they're a little late. But obviously, the huge loss of Anthony Barr and Kirk Cousins' really inability to protect the ball thus far in 2 games, already having 4 interceptions. And obviously, we've seen their young secondary's inability to cover the ball, almost having lost all their talent there. This looks like it's going to be a very long season for the Vikings. I mean, if Kirk Cousins can't figure out how to protect the ball, if they can't figure out how to execute, this season will go down in the dumps. And that's why I have a ceiling of 9-7 and a floor of 6-10. I mean, they're capable of being a lot better than 9-7. But obviously, Kirk Cousins has always gotten a lot of criticism, and for very good reason. He almost seems like he's able to perform well during the regular season, and then when it comes to the postseason, it almost seems like that quarterback you got during the regular season is kind of gone. So now that he's kind of underperforming now after the first 2 games, it's alarming, for the Vikings. So they'll have to figure out a way to get things rolling and quickly, or their season is going to be in trouble. I mean, it's going to be tough with your quarterback throwing 4 INTs in the first 2 games, and obviously they have some pretty good offenses that they have to play. Like I said, the Chicago Bears and the Green Bay Packers twice a year. With that secondary's inability to cover, this team's got a lot of question marks that they have to figure out very quickly, or their season's down in the dumps. And so with that being said, I got my last team here on the NFC North. I got the Detroit Lions with a ceiling of 9-7 and a floor of 5-11. The Lions have a very talented roster, but injuries have not really been much of help for them this far. They've lost guys like Trufant, Kenny Galladay, Julian Okwara, amongst others, already having to miss games. But when it comes to the Lions, they've not really helped themselves out either, having blown 2 double-digit leads in both of their first games, and both having been against divisional rivals, which kind of makes it that much worse. It's not good to kind of start the season 0-2 and to have already dropped 2 divisional games isn't much better. And it's kind of something that the Lions are all too familiar with, having the last 4 losses be given in the same way, having a double-digit lead and then losing it late in the game. So, they're going to have to figure out a way to keep the ball rolling and keep their offense going and putting up points and staying ahead in these late games and not giving up, leads like that. I mean, this is a very talented team. Like I said, special on offense with guys like Matthew Stafford, Kerryon Johnson, DeAndre Swift, Kenny Galladay, Marvin Jones, etc. The list goes on. On defense, Trey Flowers, Romeo and Julian Okwara. Like I said, obviously, Julian's injured, but he's very talented. So once they get him back, that will be a huge help. Jamie Collins. So this is a team that's very capable. And I even picked them as my upset pick for the week against the Packers, which it was looking very, very likely. Like I said, up until they blew that lead. So if they can figure out a way to contain these leads, especially late in the games, especially against good teams like the Packers, This is a team that can, surprise some people and do some special things this season, in my opinion. So with that being said, after having concluded all my division predictions, I will give you who I believe are the NFC Championship game teams, and that's going to be the Green Bay Packers versus the Seattle Seahawks. Two quarterbacks right now that are playing at MVP levels, have their teams playing at the highest level, both 2-0 and rolling. It almost seems like every time these two players and on their respective teams get going, it just clicks, and it almost seems like there's no stopping them. Both 2-0 so far, like I've said, both very talented, stacked teams who can put up points with the best of them, as well as make some stops on the defensive side of the ball. I have those two teams going to the NFC Championship game, and I have Seattle coming out to go to the Super Bowl. I think Russ just has too big a chip on his shoulder. He's got a lot to prove, or not so much to me, or real fans of the game, people who pay attention. But to say a guy like that, as talented as that, has never received a single vote for MVP, as talented he is, as having some of the best seasons as he's had, having gone to the Super Bowl and even won one, it's kind of mind blowing. So that's gonna be my pick for the NFC Championship game, and the winner I have is Seattle. That is the conclusion of my divisional predictions. I'm excited for the rest of this football season. I hope you guys are excited. I hope you enjoyed my breakdowns. I hope it wasn't too hard on your team. I tried to say some positive things about every team, no matter how bad I thought they would do. So, as always, thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, go watch our last video if you haven't already. And that's it.